Fragility. It's not a word you would associate with a killer, nor an action hero, especially not one who is capable of taking down tens or even hundreds of guards with relative ease. But it's a word that to me so perfectly differentiates a Brotherhood assassin from a regular old video game protagonist. I made a video a couple weeks ago talking about my ideal combat system for Assassin's Creed, and in it I spoke about how the assassin would have to die quickly in combat. They should have the ability to kill quickly, but not take a lot of hits before actually dying. A lot of you seem to agree and others seem to disagree. So I thought I would expand on that argument and explain first of all exactly what I mean by Angel of Death and why I think that this fits the assassin image so well compared to anything else. But before I do that, I want to explain why it's a very good idea that you buy your games from today's sponsor. Instant Gaming is a platform that's specifically designed to save you money when buying video games. They get their keys directly from authorized resellers. And when you browse through the page, it's actually remarkable how much money you can save on potential games. I mean, the one that's probably most relevant to you is Assassin's Creed Shadows, and you can see right now that they're giving a 29% discount if you pre-order the standard edition. So you can buy Assassin's Creed Shadows for $52 instead of the $1 million that it would cost on Ubisoft. They also have a trending and bestsellers page that can give you the best deals that they currently have on the platform. And they also have cross-platform availability, which is pretty big. They have PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. They have everything you want if you want to save money on games, especially with how expensive games are getting. So thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. By Angel of Death, I'm speaking about primarily three aspects that most define an assassin in combat. Number one is what I spoke about at the beginning of this video, which is fragility. The idea that even though you have an ability to deliver damage, you're quite fragile and take damage easily yourself. The second is elegance. The idea that when you're in combat, there is an art, a mystique, and a beauty to something that would otherwise be considered quite grotesque, which is the taking of a life. And the third, to me, is fluidity. The idea that you're able to chain your movements in one fluid motion, as if everything is part of an artistic sentence, part of a dance, part of a ritual that you're taking part in. When I see an assassin in one of these cinematics and one of these trailers, what I like seeing is that they're almost like chess players in real life, or they're almost reciting something that they've practiced a million times before, like a piano recital or a song that you've sang a million times. They're moving from one enemy to another as if they've already thought of their next two moves, as if they've already know who will die and how. This is something that adds to the cool factor, and I think a lot of you agree with that from a lot of my previous videos. Something that makes an assassin so cool is the idea of control. The idea that even if you're just one man against an army, you seem to be the one that dictates the rules. That comes from the notion of premeditation, of practice, of being so much more skilled, so much more powerful, having so much more information than your enemy, that you are the one that dictates this dance, and everyone else is following your lead. Assassins are often likened to birds of prey, an eagle most commonly. They're seen as deadly and accurate hunters who strike from above. They use movement and speed to their advantage, and once they decide to strike, they rarely miss. Another comparison you can draw between assassins and birds of prey is that they both look elegant while killing. The greatest assassins all look like they are floating from one enemy to another when they move. And this is linked to the idea of fragility so much, because if you have someone who's skilled, deadly, but light on their feet, you also associate that with weightlessness, with the idea of moving in some sort of flow state. And that requires to lack something that's dragging you down, like a lot of armor, like a lot of weight, a lot of muscle. These assassins are usually athletes or acrobats, people that have low body fat percentage and not that much muscle, and especially not that much armor. I don't imagine any assassin being tanky and always entering combat. You're more likely to make noise when you're in stealth, when you weigh a lot or you're wearing a lot of armor. You're more likely to be slower in your movements when you're trying to evade a strike or stay in the shadows. And nothing that is associated with tankiness, with being a brute, with being kind of able to take a million hits, and that's why you're so deadly, is associated with being an assassin. I usually imagine a piece of classical music, some sort of piano or violin symphony, most perfectly describing how an assassin moves. The notes aren't staccato, they're not jagged or contradictory. They usually are linked in beautifully, in long and elaborate phrases that speak into each other and flow into each other in a natural way. This is how I would personally describe how an assassin moves. And that's why I think that people like Altair, like Ezio and Arno are most assassin-like compared to someone like Bayek or Eivor. Because the way that they move is fluid. It's an entire sentence that has no pause. And this is where I think a lot of you disagree, especially those who have been exposed to Assassin's Creed in the recent RPG trilogy. I get the argument that someone that's supposed to be on the verge of superhuman and to be a completely skilled assassin, especially in the realm of fiction, should be able to just tank hits whenever they please, and if you're going to go against 10 guards at a time, you should be able to make mistakes and get hit and still survive. But I think this kind of goes against the assassin fantasy because, first of all, from a purely practical standpoint, you kind of want to be punished for not being in stealth. If you're supposed to be a sneaky assassin, a hooded figure that walks in the shadows and kills targets in stealth and disappears completely unnoticed, or is able to outrun those guards that are chasing him, you should be in some form or another dissuaded from entering combat. And this is something that I think even some of the older Assassin's Creed games didn't quite get right. For example, Assassin's Creed 3, I think, fully just pushes you into combat. But if you are going to enter combat and you haven't been dissuaded by your fragility or your lack of health, I think that you should also feel like you need to dance in between the movements to most feel like an assassin. What defines you as an actual threat to the guards, even in open combat, is your speed and your agility, not your sheer strength. First of all, because that's not scalable. That doesn't scale. Like, if no matter how strong you are as a human being, you'll succumb eventually once there are enough guards to take you down. What won't make you succumb is the ability to avoid the hits rather than take them. The ability to weave in between one guard's swing and another guard's swing and strike in between to kill both of them or one. And I think this is best represented in the Assassin's Creed Revelations trailer. I don't know if you remember, once Ezio gets discovered and he enters combat and he's kind of like facing 100 different guards, the way that he attacks these guards by making them fight against each other or weaving in between them or slashing them down quickly and just evading things is exactly how you would think an assassin deals with these situations. And of course the trailer kind of expands these a little too much because there's like 100 guards fighting against him. But if you pay attention in what you see now to how Ezio is handling these guards, I think that highlights my point exactly. Eventually he is defeated, and he's defeated quite easily just once his hidden blade breaks, but until then you see how much of a threat he is, even though he's vastly outnumbered. You have to prioritize the iconography, the mythos, and the feeling that you want to communicate to the player and you want to communicate to the viewer when you're acting as an assassin. You have to be consistent in how an assassin is represented in the lore and how he's represented in the gameplay. If an assassin is constantly represented as a bird of prey, as someone who's light on their feet, as someone who's fast and agile and secretive, you can't then make them a tank in combat as if you're in a Grand Theft Auto game or if you're playing in a prototype game. You have to maintain that fragility, that agility, and that speed in combat as well. But anyways, these are just some thoughts as to how I would want my ideal assassin to behave in and outside of combat. And I'm very curious as to your thoughts about what you think about this, whether you agree with my arguments or you still believe that even in combat, your assassin should be a little bit of a tank. If you're interested in watching that video where I discussed the ideal combat for Assassin's Creed, you can watch this video now.